So thanks, Kate, for doing a good job. I don't know how I'm going to follow that up. Sorry, y'all. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you guys about how to set up your very first service worker. Is anybody in here familiar with service workers? Like you've set one up or you have an idea what they do? Or okay, great. So you guys don't ask me any questions. I'm just kidding. I'm Carmen. You can find me on Twitter or on my blog. I've got a service worker blog post queued up right after this, so check that out. So first, I'm going to talk to you guys pretty quickly about what a service worker is, like what the problem that it's trying to solve is. We're all web developers, and the web depends on your internet connection, which can be fleeting at best. So service workers were really designed to cache files and assets from the front end on your user's browser so that if they lose connection, they can still access that part of your site, the part of your site that you have determined to cache. If you're looking at this and wondering what this is, if you want to see and be creeped out like I was, how many sites are putting in service workers, you can go to DevTools and then Applications and then Service Workers and then uninstall them like I did. So, why would I want to use a service worker? Like I had already mentioned, connection can be fleeting, and believe it or not, everybody who has connection is going to lose connection at one point or another. It doesn't have to be. I talk a lot about how income can have an impact on this, but it doesn't have to be income-based at all. It could be just as simple as your router goes out on a Saturday and you can't get to the store. So the other reason that you should use them is I think that service workers are just really, really cool. So everybody should use them. I'll keep harping on it, but seriously, everybody's going to lose connection. It's going to happen. Just like be ready for this. And service workers give you a really great way of being prepared for that ahead of time, so you're not scrambling like, what do I do? East 1 is down. My connection is gone. And your users can still get to what you've decided they can get to if it goes down. It's just really proactive. So just a couple of examples of lost connection in case you guys aren't completely sold. I already mentioned your modem or your router goes down. It's a Saturday. You can't get to the store. So that's like your user is where it's broken, right? Because their hardware's down. Or perhaps I mentioned the internet might be down. Like perhaps it's an ISP thing and they're overloaded, or they have some ISP hardware issue. Or your site is down. But the great thing about service workers is they cover all of these scenarios because the files are cached on the user's computer in their browser. So it does not work server-side. I'm really sorry. Again, because the files are cached locally and you don't have that internet connection, so you can't even get to the server. So I can tell everybody's super stoked to get started. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to register our service worker. This part goes in your application's JavaScript file. So it's really important to wrap that in an if statement because service workers are not widely adopted yet. They're pretty good in Firefox and in Chrome, but IE has some, like you can kind of get to it in Edge, but there's extra steps involved that I didn't cover here because this is just an intro, and it's really not covered in Safari whatsoever. So again, it's super important that you check that it's there. Otherwise, this line right here, that's going to blow up. So wrap it in an if statement. So that serviceworker.js file that we were registering, that's going to have this install function in it. So service workers provide some different events available. Install is one of them. So what you do is you create a cache. You can create different caches, but basically you're just going to give it a name. It can be any name. Obviously, I think I'm really funny with mine. And then here, it returns a promise. So then you've got your function here, and you add these files to your cache. So for me, my site's like ridiculously simple. It's really just static files. I added those, and we're almost done. Oh, I mentioned this. You can have multiple caches defined. You add the files in that add-all method. And you notice it's an array, so you can add pretty much as many as you want. And then we have this onFetch function. This is what gets called when we can't get to your site for any number of reasons. We call this onFetch function. So it responds with this will respond with the last, I'm trying to remember how to say this, the last part of your site that was cached. So it's going to cache each time your user hits your site, right? And those are like a stack. So the first time they hit it, we've got 1, and then 2, and then 3. And so like if it's number 502, it's going to take number 502, and it's going to serve that response back. And again, that returns a promise. So if you wanted to have some additional error checking, you could handle for that. There is a really great example from Mozilla that I included in my references. And now I'm going to show you guys a demo. So this is the code example that I was showing you. It's just really simple hello world and an image. This here, which you guys can't see yet. Can you guys see that font now? Okay, I just use HTTP serve just to spin up a server in that directory. So we can see I'm on localhost. Another thing I want to note for you guys is that in production, service workers only work for HTTPS, but there is you can use it in localhost for development. So, and be careful using localhost, because I was running 2 different servers on localhost on different ports last night, and I was seeing like cross-origin stuff between my service workers. So be careful with that. That was strange. So what I'm going to show you right here is I'm going to stop my server. And so like normally, can anybody tell me what would happen normally if your web server is down and your user can't get to it? This is a softball question, you guys. You get the dinosaur. Yeah. Okay, so check this out. So I'm going to do Command R for refresh. And it's still there. That's what I really love about service workers. They provide just an extra layer of consistency for your users. You can see they kind of scared me, but they're not that bad, at least, for something simple like this. So, and that's all I got. Yes.
So when you reconnect to the server, then your browser will automatically push that connection back up to the same page.
So the question was, what's going to happen when you reconnect? So what's going to happen is, I can actually show you real quick. So if I go in here and I say instead like, hello, OKC.js, and then I restart my server. That's a good question. Right. This is why you shouldn't do live code. Yes, it was a hard refresh to get it back. So it will continue serving the same cached files, and yeah, you do a hard refresh to get the files back. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really just have something to add because I'm so glad we're finally talking about service workers. I literally just discovered them like last month myself. I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta tell the world. So here's Carmen. A benefit of these that may not be immediately obvious, but what do you think happens to your page speed when you serve it from a server inside of your browser instead of a server like way off on US East? It gets really, really fast, like instantaneous fast. Like this is like the most free performance boost you can give your application if there's any assets to download. And it comes for free with Create React App. So if you're using Create React App, there's already a service worker registered, so you can just like get up and running really quick. So use them.
So are you saying even if the connection is not lost, you can use some of this?
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically, if you go, just like she said earlier, if you go into your inspector, like go into your Chrome inspector, and you go look at, there's a little thing next to all your cache files and stuff, and you can see your service workers, and if it's up and running, it's serving from that.
Yep. So that's right here, if you guys can see that.
Yeah, it's going to check your cache first. That's exactly right. So
Yeah.
the first time they hit your site, it's a little slow, but after that, it's like instant.
Oh, John had a question, and then.
Yeah, so not related to your presentation as much as you mentioned you go look at the other service
Yes.
Why have you removed them?
Because I'm paranoid. Oh, sorry. John was asking why I removed the other service workers. So if you check show all right here, you can see all of the service workers that have been registered. And I removed them and then noticed that a lot of them came back, which kind of stems my paranoia. So you have to be kind of careful with service workers because there is a concept of push. So if you are a nefarious person, I'm not, but you never know, then you could, really easily be pushing nefarious files to a user's computer. And so that's why you'll have to opt in. So if you have this in production, it's going to pop up and it'll say to your user, hey, do you want to allow this? And actually, I had heard from someone that there's actually some trouble with adoption. So that was just really interesting, which makes sense because whenever I see a pop-up, I'm like, no, go away. So I get it. But yeah, that was why, because I'm paranoid. There's another question? So the question was, while your connection is offline, can you persist the queries that the user is making? I don't think on its own. I think you would need something additional to do that, but there are tools out there that will allow you to do that, to persist the AJAX calls. So IndexedDB is, yeah. Okay, anything else? Great, thanks everyone. Oh, just kidding.
How do you use matching to also make sure that your user has the most, latest information on the website? Like if the website must be like, okay, give the skill set for cache, let's go with that.
So let me make sure I understand. How do you make sure that the user is getting the latest information even when they're being served up from cache? So if you remember, one of the earlier ones was we were registering our service worker. And so this is where you say to the browser what files you want to cache. And so you're going to register this every time because it's in your application JavaScript. So every time they hit your site, it's going to re-register that service worker again. So if you make updates, you'd make it to the Serviceworker.js and it'll get re-registered. Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. Thanks, everyone.